Hey everybody, it's Book of Katherine, and I'm taping a fighter video, kind of X-Fight, but it's not really. It's just, and I know I'm in a, but it's really, look at how bad it is. It's gotten darker since I taped the intro with Lila. Darker. It's so cold today. It's bone-chilling cold on the East Coast. This every once in a while, the East Coast gets this like fog everywhere. The whole East Coast. I think maybe Miami doesn't get it. Maybe Miami doesn't get it, but California gets it too. But I don't remember if it. I remember California got it too at the beaches. Oh man, I remember that. So anyway, so I wanted to talk to you about probably, well, I was going to say the most ungrateful fighter ever, but I know that's not true. Probably the most ungrateful fighter ever that was dumb enough to open his mouth and tell everybody about it. And that would be Nick the Fury Jury. So he's now fighting in Bellator, but he was fighting for the UFC. He fought with the UFC for 7 years. And so now he went, what some people would say, back. In my opinion, well, I'm not going to go ahead and get into all of that. So, but for those of you who say that Ben Askren is not much of a fighter, I would say go back and watch. That's because nobody's really watched Ben Askren's fights. Like, go back and watch some of what Ben Askren has done in previous things. What people don't understand is that with every hit you take to the head, and I am a perfect classic example of that, right? Like, perfect classic example of that, right? Is what a hit to the head will take and what will do to you. So I have been going throughout my life about like thinking about going through each of, like, for example, like, I don't think, I never thought that there had been 3 accidents, right? And I never thought that my first accident would have hurt my neck, right? Or my head, which is all brainstem and central nervous system. But I was doing an intake since we're doing so many new doctors recently. I was doing an intake, and I told them about, they're like, let's get the 3 accidents. I was telling them about the first accident, and they said, okay, so first concussion. And I was like, no, the concussion is the 3rd accident. And they were like, no. And they said the whiplash, basically the whiplash that I described, and then I realized when I watched the soccer tapes, they call the concussions when their heads don't hit. They call that a concussion. When their bodies just slam and their heads reverberate back, they call that a concussion. Anytime your brain gets hit against the inside, and then everyone gets so, it's interesting, like, we all go, oh, like, what if you get a brain injury? Yeah, well, every fighter you see that ever gets hit in the head ever, every one of those, I'm sorry, my friends, is a brain injury. Why don't you watch sometime? Watch when Jorge Masvidal took down Darren Till. What's the first thing they do? Has anyone ever watched, there was somebody I'll get to Nick Jury in a moment, but has anyone, and no, this actually goes specifically to Nick Jury, which is why I say he's the most ungrateful fighter ever. So when you watch Darren Till and he's down and he's knocked out, there's another tape online that talks about being at the fight and what happens after the knockout, right? And what happens with the crowd when there's the knockout. Well, what I do when I watch those things, I'm watching the crowd, yeah, but I get to see a bunch of things the cameras don't think. The cameras are inside the ring, right? So there are a lot of activity in the ring is cut off at those moments. And so what happens is when they pull back, when you're out in the audience, you're watching, you get to see all the ring activity. And what I saw is the moment he goes down, it goes from nobody in the ring to like 10 times the people in the ring. And where are all those people? They're all around Darren Till. Why are they all around Darren Till? Because he got knocked out. They pay fighters a lot of money to do these knockouts, and yet they don't act so well. If you really pay, the camera's cut off of it, so you don't actually see it, but they don't actually like it all that much when actually someone gets knocked out. Why is that? You should see really pay attention to what happens when a fighter gets knocked out. They get knocked out, they go down, and then like crap ton of people come out and boom, oxygen mask on. Numero uno, oxygen mask on. Now, all of this is new. You guys haven't, if you've been with the UFC for a while, or if you've even been with, they should be doing this, by the way, with anyone who falls on a football field. But they don't want to scare the fans to find out what the fans have really been watching all this time. When someone goes crash and bangs their head into a helmet and they fall on the field, they should, after every pileup, practically, if it, there's a reason why people are still lying there, they should be rushing and getting the air. I mean, seriously, like this stuff gets really, really ugly fast, but they should be putting the air on the mask. They've learned to do this over time because now they're studying the brain. Finally, we have enough clinics going around, and especially I've noticed after, quite frankly, which is why I've finally charted it out. I'm like, oh, my health, I started walking after all the new legislation with Trump in office, adding after Obamacare, but he got a lot of new legislation into office. And with that new legislation, a lot more went into neurology and into the brain. And a lot of that wasn't going on because it goes against Rome. It goes against that ring. Don't forget, Rome is where the gladiator ring happened. Don't ever forget that. When you see people fighting and there's blood on the dance floor, that began in Rome. The old letters, they all wrote about their gladiators. So if you want to know how to really make your money, if you want to know how to really make money, and you're a poor kid from the Bronx, and you're a poor kid from Boston, and you're a poor kid from Miami, it's not to get in the middle of the frickin' ring. I can't believe that there are charities for that. If you really want to make your money, become a manager for the UFC. Become a manager for one of these guys. Get 10 guys on your roster. Become one of the guys that circles in their orbit and never, ever, ever get a head injury. Because these guys, like Nick Fury's smart enough to get out, but you'll notice their faces start getting bigger and bigger and bigger as they get older, as more and more scar tissue builds up underneath the skin. We've got, such great collagen thing. It's great, such laser therapy, so the world can never see what we're really paying for, right? What all the pay-per-view tickets are fighting for. We all want to see you get knocked around, but we don't want to actually see what it does to people's faces, right? We don't want to see, we all want to pay to see Darren Till get knocked out, or Jorge Masvidal get knocked out. What did they both say? They said, I want to knock you out. Ho, let's do it, man. I want to knock you out. We both knew. All the fans who bought a pay-per-view ticket that night or bought a seat that night, and don't tell me that the fans didn't have seats that night. Oh, why didn't the fans get a seat? Oh, fans got the seat. It's just fans that have more money than you do, and go complain to the queen that you don't have money to afford seats like that. Sorry. You just decided to still be in a feudal system, so you don't have the money to afford seats like that. So people fly in from all these other places that don't have a socialist system, like a feudal system like the Queen of England. Oh, everyone's Sweet Caroline and Queen of England. Every time you guys have a victory, you sing to a woman. When women have you as poor as ever, I can't believe you can't afford the seats. Nope. You go to American Fight, and it is not all Singapore there. For a reason. People can afford their tickets to the fight. Anyway, so... Which brings me to Nick Jury. Someone who didn't have to get in the ring, didn't have to choose to be there, chose to be there anyway, who owns real estate. He's on his YouTube channel saying he has, so much real estate. Believe you me, in today's market, with the ways things are, yes, if you could have gotten in at the end of the real estate market, it would have been great. But let's be realistically with the way things have been, because everyone got into real estate after the market crashed. Everyone got into real estate after that. Realistically, we're talking like maybe at what is he? 17 fights, lost 4 fights with what they're paying. The UFC makes sure the UFC makes the profit. The owners make the profit, not the fighters. The owners make the profit, right? So, and then there's all the medical that they have to pay. There's all the management team they have to pay. It's just so much that they have to pay. So, and no one wants to manage you. That's why you have to do these fight things and have to go through a whole training camp, because no one's going to manage a fighter until they know you can take it. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things going into it. So maybe we're talking maybe a couple condos, maybe renting condos, and you can make good money. If you can even buy, let's say you go in a small town and you get one house and rent out that house. Start, like, if you want to get into the real estate market, you start with apartments or condos or apartments or whatever, and make sure it's proven investment. I have plenty of friends when I was in California who went to seminars. And of course, the seminars were targeted towards people of a certain age range. And then, gosh, they got all the bad real estate. Gosh, even like, I remember family members of mine who got targeted out of college or out of the military or out of all these different things. And of course, they got something that was nothing but a rock. I mean, it's so great when people are looking to get into real estate, that you can get taken. Real estate agents are always looking to take you and stuff. Luckily, I almost feel like it was like, in some way, like, you have got to really have learned to, like, you either do it anyway, that's a real estate thing. So we'll go to that. Nick Jury is lucky that he owns some real estate at all. You know what I mean? So he got lucky enough to get a career, not get killed. And my point is his face is looking pretty good. He's lucky. He's really, really lucky. His face is looking pretty good. He has taken a lot less headshots. He's looking pretty good. I think he's an idiot to go into Bellator. If he's gone into Bellator, he's like, first thing he says, I love making that money. It's good to be making that money again. I'm like, yeah, you've probably just lessened your life by half. I'm like, be happy you have any property rentals. Let's say 2 to 4 property rentals. Let's say 2 to 4 places that are bringing in rental money, which means you're not living in the places. Let's say you own 4 apartments or 4 condos, 4 apartments that people pay rent to you. That's, you own it, and then they pay rent to you. So you're paying, you pay a mortgage on it that's this much, and someone's paying rent to you on it that's more than that. So then you're making profit on it. Not only that, but you're making this much profit on these 4 apartments, 2 apartments, 1 apartment a month. So you're bringing in good money. Now, most people think America is supposed to be, people who live in America are told, well, you're living the American dream if you're driving around a gold Porsche. That's not the American dream. That's what Rome wants to tell you, so that you will pay Rome all that you are, become a slave to Rome in order to live that dream, which you never will be. You'll die trying to do that. No. You end up just snorting. You can go work on Wall Street, and then those people will tell you you haven't really made the dream unless you live like this guy. And that guy will tell you you haven't lived the dream until you live like that guy. Believe me, I know. I have friends who have a lot of money, and they, like, happiness is not, you'll never meet anybody who's just like, oh, I've got all, it's other things. You have to figure it out. Does that make sense? They did a study and they said everybody that's at every single level, all those levels on average say, if I only had 30% more. The American dream, you've made it when you have the freedom, when you have freedoms, how much freedom you have. Because other countries, you don't have a lot of freedom. Now, sometimes today, the way some governors are running it, there are some nations you may have more freedom in. I've seen some people running around in Russia in some places. They have more freedom. No one knows they're there. There are some people rushing around in some Asia countries. No one knows they're there. They have more freedom. There are certain countries around the world today, with the way things have gone, that things are better. But there are very specific countries, and it's not like anyone's writing about that. You got to know about that. People in the military may know about that. Those are like inside or whatever. But with COVID, who knows now? But Nick Jury's like the least, he's like, let me tell you like why he's the least grateful ever. And I'll try and leave a thing down in the below of like getting to the heart and soul of it. Number 1, he's like, oh, I turned like, okay, oh, he got a 30,000 when in the very beginning, the UFC first paycheck, he knocks a guy out and he gets a $30,000 extra on his second check, right? So not only does he win that night, so he gets $8,000 and then he gets another $8,000, which is a lot of money. It's amazing. The UFC can make you think. It can make you think that that's what people really owe. Can we all talk about the fact that that $8,000 is already like, what is that? That's like double what some engineers make in Silicon Valley. Like, they have no idea that for that one fight, they're already making, like, you know, what a starting teacher's salary is in an inner city. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't even know. Now, those teachers end maybe at that. Like, teachers may end closer to that. You know what I mean? But for a month, not for a single night. And the reason they do that is because they can't find a lot of people to do it. And because they burn through you. If you haven't noticed with the UFC, they get a single fighter, they get them kind of big, and then the moment the person gets on a streak, they just die out. It hurts getting fight in there. They will die. And people start going, they find out what it's like to get pounded like that. They know. It dies pretty fast anyway. I'm going all over the place. So Nick Jury, so he gets the $30,000 extra. And then he says, I want to go through, I'm in a lot of pain again. So he says, I got $30,000 extra. The UFC accidentally paid me over. Should I have turned it in? And then he says, well, I just wanted to take the moral high ground. I turned it in. Tell me what you guys think. Would you have done the same thing if your boss had no idea? You know, for karma's sake, I turned it back in. I talked to my manager and I did. Okay, numero uno. He had to talk to his manager about what to do. Why did he talk to his manager about what to do? He was scared. He was scared about whether or not the UFC would find out. I can guarantee you what he said to his manager was, I think they overpaid me. Can I just take it? Or is there a possibility they're going to notice? If I take it, will I get prosecuted if they notice like 10 years down the line? Is it legal? If they paid it to me, they just paid it to me. Doesn't that mean it's mine now? I can guarantee you that's what they said. And let me tell you, as someone from experience with this, one of my friends got like $10,000. The IRS paid them like $10,000 extra. Gave them a refund on their check. $10,000 extra. And they called, or was it $40,000? $40,000 extra. And they called the IRS back and they begged them. They begged the IRS to take this money back over and over and over again. And the IRS was like, it's yours. It's yours. It's yours. It's yours. And so they spent it. And then the IRS came back and was like, oops. And so they had a nice settlement that they had to do. And this person, by the way, if I remember correctly, like, it's not like they were living large. It was just somebody that I went for walks on in my apartment complex when I was teaching. You know, this is before I was in Silicon Valley. So, you know, I don't remember what they did. I just went, you know, so I'm like, can't have been earning. Nope, not a smart idea. Should have gotten legal counsel before you go and spend $40,000 that someone didn't pay you. And the answer to that is always no, it will be considered theft. And I can guarantee you that's why the guy turned it back in, is because he got the counsel. It will be considered theft. Make sure it's owed it to you. And then he said, I thought I'd get some money back because I was the good guy and gave it back. I kept thinking they'd send it back to me. I kept thinking I got a knockout that night. I was owed it to me. It was owed. And I'm like, it was your first freaking fight. And he's like, oh, it's PayPal. It did all these things. It did all these things. And all I could think the whole time I'm hearing him say this, which, you know, to be fair, he only filmed this a week ago, but all I could think in my head was, you ingrateful, like, because I'm thinking what every one of the people that helped getting there is thinking, which is this: who paid for that training kit? Who paid for everything that you did on that entire? Who was the one that let you onto their show? Who was the one that gave you all the training on that show? Who was the one that interviewed you for the show? Who paid for all the camera equipment? Who paid for the entire thing for the show. Like, who paid for all of your lodging for that? Who paid for da 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 da? They pay those guys really well because people don't want to get their faces pounded and because it sounds really good. And if they don't pay, it's amazing because they hear that guys don't get paid a lot. And I think that people would be totally shocked if they ever heard that at the bottom a fighter was getting paid $8,000 ever at the bottom. They would ever think that that's, I mean, I think they would be absolutely shocked. And the reason that is because that has to be shared with a bunch of people. But when you're in this whole entire team or whatever, you know what I mean? Then it has to go to all those people. And that's my point, is that the fighter's like, oh, but I did all this. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. How do you think all those eyes got on you? You could go knock a guy out in the street. You could go knock a guy out on the street. Is it worth 50 grand? No, it's not. It's not worth 50 grand. It's only worth what everything is. And that's why Jorge Masvidal is worth more, because he's aware. He's like, I did it with this and this and this and this. He always says, I thank who. And I haven't heard Nick ever say, if that's, he hasn't said, God, hold on. I ever say what he's thankful for, or who he's thankful to, or who helped him get it up there. And honestly, he's in Bellator. Just because you've moved to another department, never ever start talking bad about the people who have employed you before, because it crosses over. You never know that they could be the same owners, because I think they are. The owners of the big corporations today are all the same. They all go to the same parties. They all, let me put it this way, they all go to the same, racing tracks, and they all talk. It doesn't go well when you do that, if that makes sense. So I understand. I don't think he is aware of how lucky he is to get away with as few injuries as he has. And then on top of it all, so number one, he's lucky that they didn't penalize him for not saying something that night, that they didn't penalize him. He came back the next day, and that they didn't give him crap for that, right? That they let him come in the next day, and that was good. And then he comes back. It turns out he's bitter about that, and he calls himself being moral. He says that he abided by a code. Let me talk about that for a minute, this kind of like code or karma that he talks about. No, that's just the natural law that we've heard about from Jordan Peterson, we've learned about recently. The natural law is something, I'm like, it turns out all these fighters say, oh, I'm going to go against karma. I'm going to get, yeah, this whole natural law, all of these fighters seem to do that. In fact, I've been paying attention to Jorge Masvidal and what he did in all of his fights. And I'm like, why does he do it? I've even seen, I'm not going to say which fights or which places, but I have watched, the big people, the people with the most money, with the biggest things, who have, I'm going to say too much. So there's just, it has been noticed that he says something good about a fighter after he fights. Like if he wins, like say he takes down Till, then he says, don't go after him. I don't want to hear any crap about him. He's just a young bull. Like, he's going to be a warrior. He's going to be this. He's going to be that. He may know that the guy's out forever. He won't say that, though. He'll say something good about that guy, right? He'll say something good about that guy and thing. The only one he didn't do that with was Askren. It's very interesting about that, isn't that? Why he didn't do that. Why he went against, the code and all those things. But he usually goes against anyone who's willing to fight him, and he says something about that. And he always praises them in the cage. Why does he do that? Have you ever wondered why he does that? Have you ever asked yourself that? That's a very, very important question. Do you think that has to do with natural law? Or do you think that it has to do with the money that might take him out in the back streets? Should really pay attention to that and think about that. So anyway, so this Nick guy is, number one, bitter that the guy, he didn't, wrong his boss. Basically, his bosses, he's scared to death that his bosses are going to find him if he steals their money. So he turns it back in. And then he's mad at his bosses for ever letting, not giving him some money from turning it back in. Like, he's really believes he's in the mafia. Only the mafia would be like, here, take $20, kids. He's kind of like, why aren't they like the mafia? Why can't they be more like the mafia? I just beat up this guy in front of everybody for you. And he's like, but I took the moral ground. Like, I should have been paid for my morality. Why can't they be more like the mafia? I'm just like, oh my gosh, And then he's like, then he says, well, I really, really regret that I took time in between my fights. I wish I'd always taken the fights when the UFC called me up. And I'm like, really? Because then your face... First of all, you wouldn't have lasted 7 years and gotten a fight in Bellator. That's for freaking sure. You were smart enough to wait and take time to heal in between your fights, which kept longevity, which is why you own private property now and are making a living without ever having to fight again. I'm like, this is the most... Very few fighters ever get out of the UFC and then never have to really earn again. And that's the glory of real estate, is that once you buy, you never have to earn again, because that real estate churns cash flow for you. And I guess he wants to get more of a cash flow going, but I'm just kind of like, you can just, I guess he wants to live bigger or live larger. And I'm like, you're already living pretty great. If live bigger, live larger. I guess that's just it. And I'm just kind of like, if you really don't have to, do you know how many property owners and real estate people, how many people flee the most countries and get to America and do what they have to do? It's just funny to me. The middle class in America, they had these small little apartments, and they were just like, thank God they got here. They're kissing the ground. I look at what used to be considered. People used to just be like, I'm just been reading the letters from the last 150 years, and they could not stop the boats of Europe from fleeing, like from coming to America when Americans were living in shacks, when these like little shacks and outhouses, because no one could tell you what you had to do in that shack or an outhouse. And today people are like, no, I just don't want the shack or the outhouse where I have my own privacy. I just want a big pimpin' where I can have my own privacy. And I'm just like, wow, and they've just done a really good job. And I guess that's just it, is he's just incredibly greedy. And I'm like, he got out in really, 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 really good shape after doing all of that fighting. He doesn't have a limp that I know about. His face is, he could go to a bar and get picked up on. Like, someone could pick him up at a bar, his eyes aren't sealed shut or anything like that. And even that, he can talk without a lisp, which means he doesn't have that much, brain damage that I know of. Maybe he wears down in a couple hours or whatever. Maybe he has FND like I do. Maybe it comes and goes. He has good times for filming, and maybe it comes and goes. Maybe his pain is tremendous. Maybe he needs a lot of meds or something like that. Maybe he's worried about his neurological function coming in. Like, that's my thing, is that I don't think people want the quick buck that the UFC offers, but they don't think that that's going to require a massive hospital bill and a nurse for the rest of their lives. There ain't no amount of money the UFC could ever offer you. Let me put it this way. The UFC is basically paying you to be in a major car wreck. Like 6 a night. You should really think of it that way. Think about how many people you meet that limp. Just start asking the people that you see anywhere. And you see them at an older, at 45, 50, 60, and you see them limping around or having a difficult time opening the door of the car, or even your parents, and you ask them, what injury gave you that? Let me give you a great example. My mother. My mother needed to get a knee replacement. Knee replacement. Why did she need to get a knee replacement? Because of a knee injury from sports, just turning it wrong. From sports when she was younger. Does that ever tell you anything about... I'm serious. I'm not... I can't... Just... And I wasn't even on a team or anything. Like, not... I don't think so. Don't think that this was like... You know... This is like the MLK days. Like... You know, waited forever to have the children, the whole 9 yards, like freed women, everything like that. But injuries catch up. They catch up. So imagine when these guys are like, get kicked in the leg and they're like, keep going. Yeah, let's keep going. And I'm just like, you don't even understand what that's going to be. Now, men are different. I have to give it that. Like, men are different. Men are built much more like a tank. There was a guy here. I told my husband, I was like, I think he must have imported from one of the 13 colonies. But it turns out like he owns the place that we take our car to. And my husband came home shaking his head. And he's like, he's 72, 70. How old is he again? The guy that does our car, how old is he again? 75 years old. 75 years old, and he had stacked 12 cords of wood. You go ahead and look up cord of wood and find out how much wood that is. Stacked 12 cords of wood. I can't even tell you how my husband is a young man. It not easy to stack a half cord of wood. And I'm like 75 years old. And my husband was just like, and, he took me to the back at 12 had that. And I was just like, and I think it just, all I can think is like, they came from the 13 calls. We've noticed that like some fans that we're getting to know, like I did some readings and stuff like that. And some people, you know, and then they're like, oh, we're from California. And then some people, oh, we're from the East. And like, you know, and we're like, wait a minute, there's some similarities of like, you know, physicality. Like there's some physicality of stamina and this and that and whatever. It's very, very interesting. You know, it's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I'm going to have to check it out more. So I have to ask around a bit more. I can't think of anyone. I can't remember if there was anyone I knew from, I guess there was nothing to do in California. I'm trying to think of anyone I knew in California that I'm like, no, I knew people who had migrated from the East Coast to California, but maybe their families, I don't know what it is. I don't think their families were around 13 colonies. Maybe the settlers of the 13, maybe American Revolution. Like, I really think that's right. I did hear that some of those families are still around. Something about it. If you watch that show, there's definitely something different about the UK birthing. There's something about the UK birthing room than there is about American birthing rooms, like Ohio birthing rooms and UK birthing rooms. Definitely something different. And I'm just like, what's the difference? And I'm like, it's just... Or maybe it's just younger, like, maybe it's our food. Maybe a 75-year-old just had better food than we had growing up. Like, maybe he didn't have have sugar, the kind of sugar we have. Like, he didn't have, you know, what do they call it? They always call it the Twinkie generation, or the, what do they call it? The Twinkie line. They call it the, lawsuit, the Twinkie lawsuit that they did about that type of sugar, that really changed things. So for those generations. So I don't know. Anyway, or maybe, yeah, anyway. So anyway, that guy is really, really lucky. I think people should be, if you ever, I don't think that there should be any kind of charity, or definitely don't donate to any kind of charity, sending kids from the projects into the ring. Like, really, like, here, go be a gladiator, go get beat the heck up, then get a little bit of money, of which everyone around you will take away from you. And then, hey, you think you're getting into real estate? Well, guess what? How many sharks there are in the real estate business? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we all have to learn on our own. We all have to learn how to stand and fight our own battles. And that does not mean punching. Like, we all have to become civilized in this world if we want to make it to the end. Does that make sense? And if you are so, these people, these fighters are like, they want to play the natural laws and they want them to work in their favor. You know what I mean? And I'm just kind of like, but they're playing around it. They're like trying to work the natural laws to their advantage. But it always catches up to them because they're playing it for themselves. It's what did Jordan Peterson say? He said, once you know the natural laws, then you can make the rules. Yeah, that's right. The people who knew the natural laws and made the rules are the people who own the UFC. Right? Who own the UFC. And the people who stay out of it. It's like, the first ring is sitting in Rome. So what really makes me sad is that most of these impoverished communities are Catholic. It's really, really sad. And I was just going to say, money isn't everything. And I was like, but isn't that what the church teaches, right? Every single Catholic church is dripping in diamonds and pearls. Peace out. Nick Fury should be a little bit more grateful for everything he has. And if you fighters out there aren't, just keep it to yourself. You're not the best public speakers. You're not the best PR managers. You're not the best with your money. You're good at fighting, so you need a lot of people around you to do those things for you. You're not the best at booking a plane ticket. You're not the best at booking. The bottom line is the more you get hit in the head, the slower everything becomes. You can't remember the things behind you, and you can't plan for the things ahead of you. The more you get hit, the more you rely on those around you. And the more time you take off, the more you heal, and the less you need people around you, the more independent you become. And man, the UFC doesn't like that. No fight agency does. So if you get free of one and are more independent than most, you should be freaking grateful. What in the... Just don't even get it. Bye, you guys.